So Tim, a warm welcome. Thank you so much for coming along to come and speak with me about your experience of learning to be an executive advanced level coach, whilst at the same time, by the way, running a school during a pandemic. For anyone who's watching, could you share a little bit about you and your background in education?
So I'm very happy to talk about coaching and the impact it's having on my professional life now. I'm the head of a relatively small independent prep school, early years through to the end of Key Stage 2. I'm a governor in a state school in central London. I'm a governor in a big prep school out in Surrey as well. I'm an ISI inspector and one or two fingers in other educational pies. I'm a fellow of the Chartered College of Teaching, and I'm very involved with my professional association, IAPS, the Independent Association of Prep Schools.
Thank you, Tim. So clearly coaching, education, teaching, pedagogy, that's all been part of your practice. And this program that you signed on with us for, before that, had you had any experience of being coached?
I had actually, prior to moving from deputy headship into headship, I had some coaching, about 6 sessions, as I understand it. Coaching is often packaged in a sequence of sessions. And actually thinking back to the coaching I had, it was quite resource-based. The coach chose a number of sort of published resources to try and draw out dimensions or aspects of my professional profile that needed a bit of attention, perhaps, and the discussion arose from the use of those prompts, for want of a better word. But my training and my coaching since has been quite different from that. I suppose at that point in time, that approach to coaching was useful, but I've found what I've done most recently to be far more valuable.
Right. Okay, that's good to hear. So, but it didn't put you off. It was
no, not at all, not at all. I mean, the difference I know it made to me was at that point mostly practical, and that's what I wanted at that point in my career in terms of thinking about stepping up from deputy headship to headship, and I think the way in which we have studied coaching through you provides structure for people at all sorts of points in their professional educational career.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many different opportunities and different reasons why we might use coaching in a slightly different way. Yeah. So this program you signed up for, fully funded by IAPS, and to help you not only learn to be a coach, but get an advanced coaching qualification, a level 7, a master's level. You obviously knew it was going to be a lot of work and a big commitment. So at the beginning, right at that moment of signing on the dotted line, what was your driver? What motivated you to sign up for this?
I did know it was going to be a lot of work. And in fact, I completed a master's qualification myself a little while ago now. And so I had forgotten the pain of what that was like. But I was up for another challenge. I knew that my professional thinking actually would benefit from a refresh. And I was curious to understand whether this course would also offer a reset, not just a refresh. And actually, because you and I have talked about this quite a lot before, those two outcomes have actually arisen. My professional thinking was very definitely refreshed. I was keen for that, and I'm glad this course provided that for me. And the outcomes have very definitely reset how I operate as a head, and have provided me with the skills to operate as a coach alongside my headship. So I feel like I have a distinct and definite additional set of strings to my bow, if you like.
Yes. Well, let's go to that. I mean, that's a really interesting set of information, isn't it? Resetting, refreshing, and feeling that you are now being able to bring something to do with coaching to your leadership. So how would you describe your coaching? If you compare it with, for example, when you didn't know much about coaching before you started the training, now how would you describe it?
Well, a work in progress, and I think anyone who's prepared to train to coach has to understand, no matter how far down the line I think you can get as a coach, that you'll almost always be a work in progress. There's always masses to learn about coaching structures, becoming familiar with those, deciding what works best for you as a coach. But people are, as we know, astonishing and extraordinary and surprising, and through the context of coaching, reveal all sorts of amazing things about themselves, which also then has an impact on, well, me certainly, and my development as a coach. And that definitely has an impact on how I operate as a head. I didn't quite understand at the outset how much of a significant impact following a coaching qualification, finishing it and coaching would have on a daily basis in terms of what I do, in my headship role.
So can we explore that a bit more? Because I can imagine that head teachers who don't yet know how to coach may be really stimulated by that. So you say on a daily basis, what sort of impact do you notice, or do other people notice?
I thought I was an effective listener, and I came into headship with an understanding of how important it is simply to listen. At all sorts of times during the course of the day, the week, the academic year. Listen to parents, definitely. Of course, listen to children, listen to colleagues. But I didn't have the sort of understanding I do now of what really effective, proactive listening might be defined by. As it happens, the way in which really effective listening is, and that developing that skill is set out in a coaching qualification, really meant something to me. And so I now reckon I'm a much, much better listener. I'm definitely much more patient. I think the single biggest positive impact, direct, indirect, but of both really, that pursuing a coaching qualification has had on me is that it's really helped me to kind of manage my sense of impulsivity, my impatience, to make sure that I'm not just leaping ahead over things without really listening out for the details I know I'm bound to need later on. So I'm a much better listener, I'm a calmer listener, and I probably get more done that's a bit more thorough.
And that's an interesting paradox, isn't it? Because one of the criticisms of coaching is it takes too much time. We have to have lots of conversations. It slows things down. You talk about this with great enthusiasm. How much are you enjoying being like this, the calmer, more patient, deeper listener?
Massively. I mean, definitely. It's kind of reduced, I suppose, an amount of, well, not quite professional anxiety. I'm not sure I've ever felt very anxious about my role, but I think that ability to reflect on what it is I've listened really carefully to during the course of my day at school, and have a clearer, more organized sense of what it is I need to do as a result of what it is I've been listening really carefully to, means that my days are a bit more structured, I suppose. I feel like I've got better at listening out for more of what I need from everyone who I'm involved with at school.
And what are you noticing about people responding to that, your leadership team or heads of department, or indeed parents, when clearly you're in your deep listening coaching mode?
I think probably I was fairly good at listening really carefully to parents of pupils at my school. So I suppose it's really mostly in conversation with colleagues that I feel the difference is greatest. And I think I notice that with colleagues as well. I think they're a bit more reassured. They're certainly, what I've been really surprised by is that they're more willing and more willing and able to, and are proactively saying, well, thanks very much for listening. I really feel like you've really listened to me really carefully today. So, it's amusing that colleagues feel as if they can say that. They're articulating a behavior that they notice in me. And it did rather make me think, oh my goodness, all those years that I haven't listened carefully enough to you all, you clearly are noticing that I am now.
Well, so long as they're not saying, thanks for listening at long last, so long as it's not that.
No, they're not saying that. They're not saying that.
Oh, that's good news.
So far.
So it's clear, isn't it? It's having impact for you, but also people in your environment as well. What about outside of school? In daily life and in social life and so on. What are you noticing about yourself, knowing that you've got these coaching skills?
I wouldn't have ever described myself as socially anxious, but the well-being agenda is interesting, and I think more and more of us are becoming more aware of what a really effective sense of personal well-being looks like, how that might be defined, and actually thinking about the personal well-being agenda and thinking a little bit more about social anxiety, personal anxiety. Again, not something that I've necessarily ever felt was an issue for me, but again, coaching, I think, has helped me in all sorts of situations outside school, just to kind of come into social situations a bit less anxious that I feel I need to make a splash pretty early on. And again, I think this comes down to practicing the skill of being a really effective listener, learning to, just really carefully contribute to a conversation in a kind of unhurried way. I suppose that's a part of what I've noticed outside school.
And I love that expression, to be able to carefully consider how to contribute to a conversation, apart from the fact that it's alliterative, obviously. It does say, doesn't it, we don't have to rush into making the noise in the conversation. We can make someone feel comfortable by being that listener. Thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's turn our attention a bit to then the nuts and bolts of this training. This was a training that took place online during a pandemic.
Yeah.
You and 7 other fellow IPS heads. Give a bit of an overview for those who weren't on that program or any other one. What was that experience like during that training?
Excellent. Overall, it was excellent. I was not concerned about how the quality of what we were going to do might have been compromised because it was happening online. But I was, because by that stage, so much of school life had been happening online as a result of us being nearly 2/3 of the way through the pandemic. So I was comfortable with the online teaching element of it. And actually subsequently, we've more or less all met up, those who were on the cohort of 7 or 8 of us. And it was very amusing to finally, see people in the flesh, as it were. So that worked really well from my angle, at least. I thought we all managed to develop really positive, really collegiate relationships with one another, just because of the way the training sessions are structured. And then, there was plenty of mutual support for the written assignments and the theoretical work that happened in the background that, we're all big enough and ugly enough to get on with. The responsibility was on our own individual shoulders to get on with that. Some of us took a bit longer than others to finish assignments off and get them handed in and assessed, but there was plenty of support from the group along the way, and that made a massive difference.
Yes, yes. Yeah, how would you describe that sort of collegiate element of going through this with fellow head teachers who are also running their schools?
That was really, I think that was really fantastic. That gave a definite, distinct edge, I assume, to us as a cohort of trainee coaches. I think, I mean, I understand that, one can train as a coach with people from all sorts of different walks of life and from all sorts of different personal and professional backgrounds. I'm really delighted that I trained with those who were just head teachers. In fact, I didn't want to train as a coach with people who weren't part of a cohort of head teachers. And that was also one of the single biggest attractions for me of this particular course. And actually, I know I got masses out of learning how to coach and knowing I will be applying my coaching probably mostly to those working in the world of education as a result of training with other educationalists.
Yes, and I agree with you. I think it does make it quite special. And the fact that IAPS is backing this, training 24 head teachers a year, that's rare. That doesn't happen to this level. So I think the opportunity, I agree, to work with fellow heads and to have the shared experience, probably shared experience of the type of people you're going to be coaching and how that's going to go. It meant that you could all move through this together in a really collegiate way. Thank you for that. And what about during the pandemic? Everyone was busy, everyone was online, you had daily changes from central government, so it seemed, so you had so much going on. How would you describe giving up at least 36 hours of lifetime to training and other times and during this pandemic for you?
Actually, for me, it became incredibly important. And I recall from those on my cohort as we were training, similar expressions of how important and how valuable the training time started to feel to us. A, because we were able to step out of the pretty crazy, challenging, relentless world of what running a school during a pandemic looked like and just do something else intellectually for a while, which gave us all a bit of a break. But I think the further through the training we progressed, the more we realized what an incredibly valuable qualification this was, and therefore how important it was to remain committed to it. And I also thought, for goodness sake, if I, as part of a group of other heads, if we can all keep going together at this point in time and at this sort of stage in our careers, set against what was happening nationally, then that's a pretty good sign. Hopefully that means we're going to become good coaches. I know we all actively looked forward to the training sessions, partly because of what I mentioned a few moments ago about realizing how valuable it was, but also because we realized the more we learned, the more there was to learn. And that was a great spur for us, I would say.
Thank you for that. And I think, there are many great things, but I definitely think that I've used words like role models and trailblazers, and the idea that if you can do it during this type of high pressure time, it's always pressure being a school leader, but knowing that in more sort of moderate times, actually other school leaders could be able to engage in this and do their learning here.
Yeah, I know we all committed to making our training sessions online absolutely immovable feasts, and I'm really glad about that. We were all on the same page, and I think that speaks to the quality of the course and, well, a bit to our commitment, but also to our understanding of the quality of the qualification. It's a proper coaching qualification, and it felt like a great privilege. Plenty of us said that at the end. It felt like a great privilege to have the opportunity to take that qualification on.
Yes, absolutely. And I have this memory of one of those dates. We had a session during the afternoon, and it was one of those days that was return to school for post-lockdown. And we said, should we postpone? And everyone was like, no, can we have an hour off? But let's push on, let's keep it in the diary. And that was hugely impressive and hugely important, I think. It really symbolic. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of more questions before we come to a close. The IAPS has this, the way that they've structured this is that you have the opportunity to pay it forward by coaching new head teachers, new to IAPS heads. How have you found that? What's that experience been like?
Transformational. In a really surprising way. Transformational because starting off as a rookie coach back in September with my coachees, trying really hard to put into practice, now that when I'd been let out of the pen on my own, off to coach new heads. I mean, I felt the responsibility, very strongly. So I was very definitely sticking to what it was we'd been trained on. And actually that was incredibly helpful. That gave plenty of structure to those initial coaching sessions in the first term. So transformational because as the coaching has continued, I've learned an awful lot about myself and the development of my coaching, and actually a bit like initial teacher training, a bit like getting into any professional realm. You do your theory, you do a bit of practical training, but it's not really until you're out there, in the field, being what you're supposed to be, that you feel your practice develops. And I've definitely felt that this year. I feel I've become a better coach, slightly more accomplished, still plenty of room left for development yet, but that's good. I'm glad about that. And then the insights that I know my coachees have arrived at has been very humbling, because the feedback has been very positive from them. They have explained that during the various points in our structured conversations, they've overcome personal and professional obstacles that have held them back in their headships, but they've now worked out a path through them or a way around them. And that's so powerful to hear. And actually, it's because they've arrived at those insights themselves. It's not because of anything I explained to them or told them to do, or any directions I was pointing them in. The coaching got them there, and they got there themselves.
Yes.
And that's very rewarding to see.
Yes. Right. It's the proof of the pudding, isn't it, of you learning to do this thing well, and that the thing itself of coaching works well.
Yeah, I mean, there have been opportunities to sort of mentor alongside, and we've talked about that as well. And actually, I've become all the more secure, as I know numbers of us have who completed the coaching qualification, in our understanding of the difference between coaching and mentoring.
Yes.
And that's been good. So it's been really helpful for me and my coachees to kind of flip every now and then from a coaching mode into a mentoring mode on occasions when it's felt like that's just actually what's been required at a particular point in time during the coaching conversation.
And I think that's what we see, where it's different from a very new coach indiscriminately bouncing from one to t'other, whereas an experienced coach, when you can dip in, provide what you need, and then dip back out. That's really important. And I think your answer gives, it really shows these dual principles of what IAPS is looking to do, to help head teachers like you become great, qualified, skilled coaches for your own benefit as a leader, for the benefit of your school. But then this other thing, that new head teachers get a coach, and they get a coach who's a head teacher, who's a skilled and qualified coach, to help them navigate that challenging first year. I think it's such a win-win, such a brilliant idea, I think, that IAPS came up with when it got going. So it's wonderful to hear your views. So final question, of course, as with all the best chat shows, I would always ask, what's next for you? What's on the horizon? So what's next for you, either as a coach for you or as a coach within your school?
I'm very happy to continue coaching IAPS heads. I've got another year of coaching, a few more of those, 3 more heads into my second year of coaching. That'll be great. I mean, I enjoy meeting new people, and I love working in education. So I'm happy to have that combined. I'm a bit nosy naturally as well, so it's great to have a structured way to get really into the hearts and minds of some new head teachers starting out on their career. I'm looking forward to that. I'm already thinking about how I might develop my own professional coaching profile that can sit alongside my day job. And I've got a pretty good number of years of headship left in me yet, but one day I might shake the mantle of school leadership off and maybe work a bit for myself. And I can see how coaching might be a part of a blended move into my twilight years when they arrive. And then, on a daily basis, I know that the principles of coaching are having an impact on how we develop our school improvement agenda here at school, and also on how we continue to develop our teaching staff appraisal system. We call it professional development review, and we are almost at a point where an entirely new evolution of that will be in place in my school from September onwards, that has a very direct, deliberate instructional coaching element to it. So that's been really positive, and that will remain here at school, which I'm glad about.
And that's great to hear, because there are some really great elements. The coaching approach to the appraisal development process works really well. Experienced head teachers, then when they move away from headship, to be able to offer a coaching approach rather than a mentoring or consultancy approach, I think that has real power to it.
And actually, as I mentioned, I'm a governor in a couple of schools, and the way in which I know as a governor, it's really important to retain a bit of objectivity, to govern rather than get very directly involved and manage. Again, a bit of a coaching structure and approach to how I operate in governors' meetings has helped me there as well, and that will remain with me too.
And that's a wonderful thing as well. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tim, it's been a real delight to talk to you, and your passion, your enthusiasm, and your commitment that we saw in the course anyway really come through in this conversation. So thank you for being a trailblazer, for flying the flag for coaching through a pandemic and in the sector, and helping other head teachers who either are coaches or are keen to be coaches to be able to see actually this is a path really well worth pursuing. So thank you very much, and I'm going to wish you all the best with all of your coaching.
Thank you very much.